My wife is probably gonna kill me for this one. Hey, what's up? So yesterday I went drawer surfing, found everything I was looking for, headed over to the office, found a box and some packaging tape, went over to FedEx and shipped out about $800 worth of camera gear. Where to, you may ask? Well, let me give you a little bit of backstory first. I've been a photographer both as a hobbyist and professionally ever since around 2013, 2014 when I came across Ben Brown and Steve Booker, who were traveling around taking photos, and it really inspired me to really pick up a camera and start exploring. Even before that, in high school I took a film photography class, which was really fun. Like a lot of other hobbies, camera culture can be really expensive, like really expensive if you dive into it. But there's something in me, maybe it's the minimalist in me, I'm not sure. I always want to find the best all-around version of something. So instead of buying a ton of camera lenses and a ton of gear, I want to find one camera, one lens that does the job. I'm a musician as well, and just like that, I own one guitar. It's a Martin and it has served me well for years, and I see no reason to get a different guitar until this one craps out on me. There's something about being able to travel light and easy and not having to make the choice between which tool you're going to use for the job. You've got one tool and it hopefully does everything well. The camera I'm using right now is the Sony a7 III paired with the Tamron 28 to 75mm lens, and this is my professional setup. If I slap a Rode Video Micro on top, I can shoot any photo and any sort of video that I would ever need to with the type of work that I do. It's one setup, there's no decisions that have to be made. I throw it in a bag and go out on a job. So professionally, everything's checked, everything's taken care of, but I ran into a problem when I wanted to really document family stuff and go out on shoots just as a hobbyist. This camera is heavy and it's bulky, and though it takes amazing photos when you're carrying a toddler in your arms and pushing her stroller because she doesn't want to sit in it, what hands do you have for a big bulky camera, and where do you put it? But I want a camera to go out and shoot with, to take on family trips, to take on family outings that are just around town that take better photos than just my smartphone camera. So the not so minimalist in me started looking around for gear to fill this sort of hole, this void. And it resulted in 3 different pieces of camera gear that I shipped out yesterday. So when my daughter Lena was born, I really wanted to vlog that experience, and I did, and you can watch it over on my vlog channel. And so I figured, you know, maybe I should get back into vlogging. It's something that I had done in college with the band that I was in when we were on tour, and I really enjoyed it. So I went for the most vlog-worthy point-and-shoot camera out there, which was the Sony ZV-1, which I'm calling the Gen Zer. Great vlogging camera, great video camera. In fact, I've used it many times for an overhead camera for the journaling videos on this channel, and anytime I need something light to put above me to shoot down onto a desk or something. Great video camera, pretty good stills camera as well, but it just didn't serve the purpose that I really wanted it to, and unless I was using it as an overhead camera, I've stopped vlogging, so it was just sitting there, a huge chunk of cash, collecting dust on a desk. I also just kind of realized vlogging is not really what I want to be doing right now with my time, and we can talk about that more later, but I realized I really wanted a nice stills camera. I wanted to take photos. So this camera didn't work well, so I moved on to something else. I saw all the hype around Fujifilm cameras, and so I was like, maybe I can find an old Fujifilm digital camera that's cheap that I can take around with me for these photo shoots. And that introduced me to the Fujifilm X10, which I'm calling the slow old grandma. Long story short, this is a really fun camera, and I really love the old menu system and the limited amount of stuff that the camera could do, but ultimately it was very slow. The images weren't the best quality, which obviously it's an older camera. So it really wasn't working for me. I took it on some trips and I got some photos with it, but ultimately it still wasn't doing exactly what I needed it to. So my third step was like, hey, I've got the Sony a7 III. Obviously it takes amazing photos, I love it. why don't I just try to make the Sony a7 III a little bit lighter? So I said, why don't I find a 35mm very light, inexpensive lens to slap on my main camera, and that will make it a bit lighter, and maybe I can take it with me everywhere I go. So I came across the Samyang 35mm lens for the Sony camera system. This is a super cheap lens. It was around $100, and it's actually amazing, and I've loved the stills it's been able to take, and I was taking my main camera around with me on family trips and stuff like that. But still, the Sony a7 III, even with a lighter lens, is really heavy. And also there's something a little scary about going on little family trips where I'm not super concerned with the gear I have on me, and this is the bread and butter. This is what makes me money, my Sony a7 III, and the idea of just having it thrown somewhere while I'm playing with Lena or something where it can be easily stolen. I don't know. I didn't like that either, and the camera was still really heavy. It just wasn't working. It was bulky. Maria was even like, why do you gotta mess with that thing all the time? So this was my favorite setup so far, but it wasn't fitting what I needed. Just as a super side note as well, I've really gotten into street photography, or at least watching street photographers and the photos they take and why they take them, which we'll talk about at another time. I'm very sure of that. But I came across Sean Tucker on YouTube and on Instagram, and he actually shot on a7 III with the Samyang 35mm for a little bit. So I was like, wow, I'm in good company. Like, I thought I was making these decisions on my own, but apparently even some of the best are using this setup. So, but anyway, again, this still didn't sort of scratch the itch that I was looking for. And so I started to think about point and shoots again, and if it was possible to find a point and shoot. When you think of point and shoot cameras, you think something your mom uses, or your mom used to use, or your dad used to use, something that they would just have. It was small, it fit in their pocket. They could take pictures of your sporting events. They could take pictures of you embarrassingly in front of attractions at a theme park. And so you don't really think like this could be an actual professional, you know, hobbyist camera setup that could produce some great images. But that said, as I started to get into street photography and watching these videos, I came across the ricoh camera, and it has blown me away. It's the ricoh GR3 specifically, and I'm calling this one the street photographer's dream. So I had heard of the ricoh GR3 before in YouTube videos, but again, I had this like idea in my head that like, why would I ever get a point and shoot? Like, that's not ew, you know, like why? But the more videos I came across about people raving about this camera, it started to turn my head. And so I started to think, hey, I want something light, I want something small, I want something that I don't have to fidget with a lot, that if, you know, I need to grab Lena, or if I need to grab an ice cream, or whatever the situation, I just shove it in my pocket. And the cool thing about this camera is that it's got a pretty massive sensor for the size of the camera body. So I'm not trying to get too technical here, but this was maybe the answer. So the image quality paired with the portability of this camera is what really sold me on it. And I don't want to bore you with all the little technical details of why I really think this camera is going to be great. Hopefully the images I'll be taking in the future will speak for themselves. But this is my fourth and final attempt at finding this little scratch for this itch I've been looking for in a camera system. And so that is actually in the mail, and it's on its way here. Maria, please forgive me. But where did all the other stuff go? Where'd my other gear go? So I boxed all the Fuji camera, the Sony ZV-1 camera, and the Sony 35mm from Samyang. Boxed them up, put them in the mail. As I've been, you know, watching these street photographers and getting into Vero again as well, which I'm sure you've heard Vero through the news and Peter McKinnon and all this stuff a lot lately. But as I've been getting in there talking with other photographers, I was passed on this website called mpb.com. Honestly, I don't even know what it stands for, but basically they buy and sell camera gear. So you can say, hey, I've got these 3 pieces of camera equipment, they're in great shape, how much would you give me for them? You send them in, and they will look at them, make sure that everything's fine, and then actually just pay you money. Or you can upgrade to another camera that's on their site. So I found a used ricoh GR3 on the site in great condition, And luckily for me, selling those 3 pieces of camera gear and buying the ricoh, I actually make a little money. So it didn't cost as much as what I was selling. So Maria, now's when you can make a sigh of relief. I made money on this. I downsized everything. I'm minimizing stuff, and hopefully I couldn't be more happy. We'll have to see. I think the camera's coming in the mail today. And so this is the story of my camera journey so far with this camera that I'm looking forward to taking pictures of the family on trips. Lena's got her birthday this weekend. I hope I have the camera I can take pictures of that. I'd love to do some street photography. I'm gonna be traveling a little bit for work here in the coming months, and even up to New York, which I'm pumped for. And maybe I'll have to hit up Fifth Avenue like some of the great street photographers and take some snaps with this camera. And to be able to travel with something so light that could even just fit in my pocket, I'm super excited about. But that's sort of my minimalist journey as far as cameras go. I'm interested to know if you're a hobbyist, or even for work, if there are tools of your trade that you could hoard and start collecting a bunch of. And if you're a minimalist like myself, what steps you're taking to maybe find the most important pieces of gear and getting rid of the rest, or consolidating into a couple, like in my case, a couple different camera systems that hopefully tick all the boxes across what's needed. Thank you so very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, watch this one. I think you're gonna love it. Subscribe to the channel, like the video, leave a comment down below, and all my social channels and where you can find me are down in the description below for you to check out, and there's even some free downloads down there that you can pick up as well. Follow me on Vero. That's all the hype these days. I'll see you over there, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks.